Welcome back to Framework. This is John, one of the hosts of Framework, and I'm afraid our other host, Al, is out on assignment today. He will not be joining us to talk about Starman, but that's okay. I have two guests today. One returning guest, Gwen Sisco. Welcome back to the program.
Happy to be here, John.
And first-time guest, Adam Goodwin. Welcome to Framework. How are you today, Adam?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, and this is the episode on the film Starman. This is the what is this? The sort of the 8th John Carpenter film, I believe. Is that right? Something like that. And came out in 1984, following Christine, and right before Big Trouble in Little China. This is kind of like right in the middle of John Carpenter classic era. You know, right when he's making. Well, I mean, this is kind of right in the middle of his Amblin phase. We'll get into in a second. But so what are you guys' relationship with John Carpenter? I mean, I've been talking at length about this pretty much the entirety of 2023 at this point. Gwen, how familiar are you with the works of this man?
I would say medium familiarity. I definitely... Big Trouble in Little China was a big one growing up.
Yes.
And this movie was a big one growing up.
Interesting.
And
okay.
That was kind of it. I mean, I was aware of other things. And of course, later I ended up seeing the Escape movies and Halloween, etc. But really just those two were a big part of my childhood.
Notable because they are not horror films remotely, and that's his deal. That's his main thing that he's known for. This and that don't really even have a hint of horror in them. I guess there's a little touch of it. You can't really get away from it in any genre, but no one would call those horror films, which I guess is why kids come to them first, or some do. I didn't see this Starman until a few weeks ago for the first time. This was a new one for me. Adam, how about you, John Carpenter?
So I would say Big Trouble in Little China is a movie that I enjoyed a lot as a kid and as an adult. The Thing is one of my all-time favorite thriller horror type movies.
Great
and
movie.
I grew up with the Escape movies also. And Carpenter was always kind of like, I was always aware of him and knew a few of his movies and loved a few of his movies. I don't think I had ever seen Starman in its entirety until I watched it about a week ago.
Yeah.
I think that I had never seen the beginning, and I think had seen most of the rest of the movie, kind of that old phenomenon that doesn't exist anymore of, like, oh, I caught this on TV, which kids these days don't really have that experience of like, oh, I've seen the middle part of this movie 100 times, but never the beginning or the end.
Yeah, I can't imagine ever doing that. I can't imagine being like, well, what's on the channels? You know, like just...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I feel like to me, the clearest example is like I've seen the middle third of Office Space probably 400 times on Comedy Central, but the beginning and the end probably just once or twice. Yeah, so this movie, I think, was I don't know what channel I would have watched this movie on as a kid. Who knows? Maybe my parents were watching it. But
this feels like an HBO special to me.
Exactly. Yeah, sure. Definitely HBO type. It's a weird movie that I was actually really having a good time watching when I finally sat down and watched it.
Yeah,
in the last few days.
Cool movie. Not at all what I expect from Carpenter. I mean, and that's not to say he doesn't do movies paced like this. I mean, there are, Halloween is a very deliberate film, but this is I don't know. I mean, is it a sort of a side hand compliment to call this mature or measured? This is deliberate. But it works for it. This is, for people unfamiliar with Starman, as I largely was until it came up on the rotation here. This is, I guess the simplest way to describe this is, it's basically what if E.T. was super sexy and you wanted to fuck him? Like, basically, that's basically the premise.
Wait, you guys didn't want to fuck E.T.? Is that...
Not as much as Jeff Bridges in this film.
Thank you. With the added element that E.T. isn't just sexy because on that planet people are sexy, but that it's chosen to take the form of this woman's recently deceased husband.
It's kind of messed up.
Very recently deceased.
Ugh. Like,
well, and I like that you bring up E.T. because I actually, while watching this movie, E.T. came out 2 years before this movie came out.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhat famously, in '82 when E.T. came out, there were a couple other sci-fi movies that kind of became box office flops.
The Thing being one of them.
The Thing being one of them, and then Blade Runner being the other one. And when I was watching this movie, I really could see the conversation that Carpenter was having with other people of like, all right, well, if E.T. is what people want, let's do something kind of like E.T., but with a Carpenter twist on it. And so that's kind like I saw a little bit of that with this movie when I was watching it.
I mean, you can kind of like it's hard not to. I mean, this is so E.T. and not a little bit of Close Encounters of the Third Kind as well.
Yeah. If once again I went through the Amazon Prime trivia,
Yes.
and from that I learned that like the production company had E.T. and Starman both on the docket, and they were like, we can't do both of these. They're too similar. So let's scratch this E.T. thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they gave up on like one of the highest grossing films that had ever happened. And then Starman ended up coming out much later and just being a bit of a dud because it felt like they were trying to redo E.T.
Yeah, that was a
sadly
surprise that this script was making the rounds at the same time, kind of.
Yeah.
There were like directors that were interested and then jumped off because it was
so many
ET,
different directors.
Yeah, this was this is Carpenter in journeyman mode. He's still kind of in recovery from the Thing. He didn't write this script or really have anything to do with it. He was just like, oh yeah, I think I can make that. I'd like to make something that's not a horror film. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Well, and something that I noticed, it almost seems like Carpenter was kind of fighting against that even throughout the movie, because there were so many moments in this movie where it really feels like Carpenter wants the movie to be a little bit scarier or creepier than the screenplay might allow, which I kind of appreciate throughout. And I almost wanted it to be a little bit more like legitimately scary throughout. But I was looking at, I wasn't super familiar with the writing team, but I know two of the guys went on to write Stand By Me, which is like a very sentimental movie. And you really feel that in this movie. So to me, it made me think like, oh, Carpenter really wanted this to be a little bit spookier, but it's just really hard to make this screenplay spooky while not making it like, what do you do with a love story like this? Excuse me. If it's just like, it's one of the weirdest balancing acts of a love story I feel like I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, this shouldn't work on paper. Maybe, or I don't know. There is potential here. I mean, I think it actually is very smart in the way it goes about it. For a while, it's the sort of Beauty and the Beast Stockholm syndrome kind of thing, that it's doing. And
yeah, it did.
The performances
continually surprise me.
Yeah, the two leads are so keyed into each other, and so keyed into the tone of the Thing that it never feels like. He's never going to hurt her. You're never thinking that's a possibility after the first 5 minutes or so. And even then, you kind of know what movie you're watching, which is not unlike E.T. The first 5 minutes of E.T. are a little scary, too. But I feel like this premise could easily be a very broad film. Like, there's a version of this that feels like Ghost, or maybe even a Molly Ringwald comedy of the era. Like, this is... It could be a sci-fi movie or even a comedy first, and I think it's a romance first. I think it is. Yeah.
Just something that's interesting to me about it is I feel, and I don't know if there were earlier versions of this trope, but it's so clear, the trope in this movie of like fish out of water guy with a female co-star who's kind of leading them through. Like, I feel like we've seen that in things, it feels a little Micho Black. Crocodile Dundee. Yeah. It feels a little Micho Black. It feels a little, what were the other examples? Like even Michael, that John Travolta movie. Like, it has that.
I was weirdly reminded of Michael in this. I don't know why.
Well, because I think that trope is very specific and we don't see it that much anymore. But it, like, even you could even say like the first Thor movie even kind of feels like that.
That
of
does feel like
the
a throwback,
guy who can't quite, who can't quite figure it out, so he needs a woman who he might fall in love with. to kind of guide him through it. I couldn't think of any examples that are the opposite, which is telling in a few different ways. But
Splash
fair.
is sort of the
Good call.
opposite. But I mean, literal fish out of water. But but yeah, you're right. It's much more common to have this like the feminine person being like, I'm gonna take care of you and we're gonna figure this out together.
My stepmother is an alien,
and it helps.
Remember that one?
In this case, unlike in Splash, like it doesn't start out with, oh my God, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It starts out with, oh my God,
this is terrifying.
You're my dad. I mean,
and the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
On the note of terror and horror, as a child, that like creating himself out of the whatever zygote of hair, blah, 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 and turning into a person scared the shit out of me as a kid.
I could imagine. It's
so much.
That's the most like John Carpenter creepy moment of the whole thing. Where you're just like, look at that puppet. Jeez. Yeah.
All I could think was, I hope they burn that baby puppet. I don't want to see like that. The initial baby is terrifying looking. Like all of it is kind of scary, but man, I don't want to see that prop in real life ever.
Yeah, and she just does such a good job she's so great at emoting and telling so much with just her face and her eyes.
Most underrated star of the 80s, I think, Karen Allen. Why wasn't she Julia Roberts? I don't understand it. I mean, I feel like, you can't talk about Karen Allen without being like, why wasn't she the biggest star in the world? Like, she's unbelievable. She's one of the best actresses. She has this iconic career-making Raiders of the Lost Ark performance. And then, I mean, she's great in many other films, including this. This might be her best performance. But, like, there's Scrooged, and she has a small role in Animal House. And I'm drawing a blank for any other Karen Allen films. That's a crime. I mean,
those are the ones that definitely stick out for sure. Yeah. Also, just to say, of like watching this movie, it's hard not to look at Jeff Bridges and be like, man, this guy has had a fun career. Like, what a bunch of different types of movies he's done. And like, this performance could have easily been very phoned in and very stupid. And he brings a lot to it that makes it like really dynamic and interesting, and actually makes their relationship something that you're like, wait, am I rooting for this to happen? I don't know if the movie wants me to root for this to happen. The two of them getting together. It's
would have felt so cheated if they didn't. I'd so upset if it remained chaste. But it doesn't. He's wonderful in this. This is he was nominated for an Oscar for this movie. The only Academy Award nomination that a John Carpenter film has received ever, which is a shame.
I did not know that.
Not even for score. He never got nominated for score. He did win an Oscar for a short film before he made anything else, so he won an Oscar. But still nothing for any of his movies other than this one performance in this film, which is great.
Yeah. I mean, also on the note of like how this is different from Carpenter, I do remember like my parents hating horror as a genre and thinking like, oh, this is his one good movie.
Well, this is one for families. I mean, it could be, like, right. I don't know. I feel like as a kid, I probably wouldn't have liked this as much as I did as an adult. But you grew up with it.
It was harder to understand for sure.
Well, I feel like as an adult, I think you get a much different experience when you start to realize how much, like, especially when you see the movie from Karen Allen's character's perspective. As an adult, you're like, whoa, there's a lot going on here in terms of grief and loss. And as a kid, I don't know if I could have gathered all of that.
Absolutely not. Yeah, that's the main thing in that movie. I mean, the sci-fi stuff is great. It's effective. It's exciting at times, and and intriguing at others. But yeah, the thing that sticks with you in this movie has got to be just the absolute bizarreness of Karen Allen's situation, and trying to process what this would be like. Like your recently dead husband returns as a starman. Oh my God, what do you do about that? I have sex with him, I guess.
I mean, I guess.
Well, but I think it's interesting because it seems like what sort of turns her perspective on him is seeing his like
Say
determination
humanity.
to
Say
preserve
humanity.
life.
Oh, okay.
No, to the preservation of life, you know, the way he, you know, tries to save the deer, which is another thing that's like burnt into my memory as a kid.
Oh yeah. They made a whole movie about that called Powder, actually.
It's very similar to Powder. That was another, like, there's no like, you know, beautiful woman trying to take, well, is there a beautiful woman trying to protect him in Powder?
It's been a minute on Powder. I got to
Yeah,
tell you.
Powder is a movie that like holds such a specific place in my brain. It's so, I remember it being a movie that freaked me out as a kid, and that's basically all I remember about Powder.
I loved that movie.
It's a weird one. I mean, I remember the deer thing mostly from Powder.
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, Powder also has the ability to transfer the pain and fear the deer is feeling to the hunter. You know, he pluses it up.
If only Starman could have done that.
I mean, I bet he could have, but he just wasn't a dick. I bet he was just like, you know, no, that's not what this is about.
Yeah,
Starman can do anything, I'm sure.
But yeah, I think it's just interesting. I believe that when she comes around, why and how she comes around, it doesn't feel like a ham-fisted, like we have to somehow turn this into a romance. Like, I understand having gone through all that grief and now getting to see him and see the way he's protecting life, how that would be healing for her.
Oh, it's so well handled. Like, this is the thing I think the movie does best, honestly, is putting us in her kind of perspective and experiencing this as she does. The build on her turn, on how this all plays out, is so well drawn. I mean, we're introduced to her just like luxuriating in being a widow, essentially, just like smoking cigarettes, drinking wine, and listening to old albums. Sadly, you know, it's almost
watching old like family videos.
Yeah, I mean,
of him being so perfect and alive.
Well, what a perfect specimen, man. Jeff Bridges in the early '80s. God, yeah, I can't get over that. But like, I feel like we're with her all the way through it, and even like, because it starts out where she's obviously just like, this is a terrifying situation. I saw the baby puppet. I am alarmed. And she kind of gains a bit of more understanding and respect slowly. Then she's just trying to escape rather than stop him. You know, she's like, okay, he can do it. He can do his thing. I'll just get out.
I don't need to be a part of it.
And
which makes sense.
Oh yeah. But it all makes sense. It makes sense why she stays. Yeah. It makes sense why she seeks him out after he decides to abandon her, because, you know, because he cares about her. It is so well played, so well modulated. I mean, I don't know. There's other things in this movie that aren't quite so well handled, like the the hippie who decides to go to jail for 20 years for her at one point. Stuff like that kind of just happens.
Yeah, there's a few of those things that pop up that feel very like mid 80s, like let's just get to the next scene type of, we need to solve this problem and just move on with the movie type of stuff, which I kind of like.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
A little bit.
Doesn't matter.
We don't get that as much as we used to, and I kind of love seeing it now in retrospect.
Yeah. My biggest complaint about this film is that he's got the entire like military after him, and he never once thinks to just take off the bright red checked shirt that he's wearing that they've seen him in before. Just one slight costume adjustment. Like, who wouldn't think of that? Nope. He's just going to keep wearing this bullseye target on his back.
From the writer's perspective, though, I feel like they probably had that conversation, and then they were like, I don't know, if we get him to change his clothes, it's just going to be too, how do we get them back on track then? Like, it's almost like a plot issue where you need him to be looking the same in order to have them continue to go after him on a certain level. I don't know. It's like the plot of this movie, I really do. Like, I love the, what's the character who plays the secret agent guy. It's the what's his name? Charles Martin Smith, who's the actor who plays that role of the guy who eventually, I love that trope too. The guy who's on the military side who ends up being the good guy in the end. I mean, it made me think of like John Cusack in Con Air. That's for some reason that jumped out at me.
Totally.
Of like that guy that's like separate from the main story and like has a few phone conversations. Or even like Baldwin in Hunt for Red October, like that sort of stuff. Like, I love those characters that we usually don't get in movies anymore because everything's too big. Like this movie definitely feel like this is a pre Deep Impact Independence Day alien movie. I feel like ever since we reached those movies, it's been, you know, the world is going to end. And I miss these like very intimate character stories with aliens that I don't think we really see in movies anymore.
Oh yeah, what I wouldn't give for just a deeply hopeful, relatively straightforward sci-fi movie of this type coming out now. God, I
feel like that's what Shape of Water was.
Yes, and it's great. I love Shape of Water, but you know, it's what 7 years ago at this point, and it won.
And it
Best
takes
Picture?
a specific right,
You
and
know?
it takes a specific type of director to want to take that on.
Yeah, Del Toro is a good call for this. He's one of the few guys doing this sort of thing anymore. He has such a specific thing, you know. The monster is good guy and misunderstood, but like, I mean, that is essentially what this is. Essentially, this is sort of his Del Toro film as well as his Spielberg film.
A little bit, yeah.
I mean, it's
except
mostly a
I
Spielberg
would
film.
never call him a monster except for when he's the baby puppet.
That's true. I mean, he can pose pretty effectively as a gorgeous man. How many times will I mention that?
It's fine. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
I will say on your point about Charles Martin Smith, like I also love that character and miss those kinds of characters. I also think he was written like if there's any bad writing in this movie, it's in all of his scenes.
100%.
I don't enjoy the writing in those scenes at all. I just enjoy the idea of him and what he's trying to do.
Well, all of those like government scenes are written to be like, okay, audience, you know what this scene is, like sketchy government.
A little bit.
Yeah. Like, and there used to be a lot of that of just like, these are the kind of omnipotent bad guys sort of that are trying to get this alien in a way that you don't want. Like E.T. has it. All these alien movies have it. Right. And it's never the best part of the movie, but I understand why it's like a necessary thing they need to lean into. And it serves its purpose.
Yeah, I know. I mean, in this case, they're pretty explicit about what's going on with Starman, which is that he responded to the Voyager 2 probe, which we sent out. The same probe from Star Trek The Motion Picture as well. So, yeah, it is very much a dick move on our part to just, like, attack his ship and try to hunt him down and vivisect him. That's, you know.
Yeah.
Is that, I don't know. I feel like that's pretty standard, no matter when your sci-fi movie is, that the U.S. government is actually bad. I mean, unless they're defending us
always
from, war aliens,
it's certainly the militant core of the U.S. government is always going to be on the wrong side of the game, it seems like. But there are so many, I feel like I would love to explore even further, like how much hypocrisy we have about how we're like, we're friends with the universe. Come, welcome. We want to talk to you. And then we'll kill you and blow you up.
I mean, it's implicit here for sure. You know, like that's a significant part of it, you know, just bringing the Voyager into it at all. I mean, I guess you sort of need that. You don't need that. You know, I was thinking you need it so he can speak English and know something. No, he's an alien. He can know whatever he wanted.
But I think it's neat that they connected it to like something that had happened in recent history.
Yes.
That like I was not like a conscious person at the time, but I remember becoming aware of the fact that we had done that and thinking how exciting it was that maybe one day, you know, somebody out there will hear it and try to communicate back and, you know.
Yeah.
Although weirdly, and I don't know why I felt the need to look this up, it must have been a rights thing, but Satisfaction, the song, not on the golden record.
Oh, damn.
Which I found interesting.
That's infuriating.
It's Johnny Be Good, actually.
Well, there's a lot. There's stuff from like all different cultures. There's Bach, there's Beethoven, but the like American rock and roll song, it's Johnny Be Good and not Satisfaction.
Interesting. I was kind of like, if they were just going to make something up, I wonder if there was a temptation to just do Starman.
The fact that nobody... that song doesn't come in at all,
Yeah.
especially because, you know,
it's kind of about
Bowie had also made The Man Who Fell
right
to Earth. That's what it's called,
Yes.
which is very, very similar.
It is. You're
You
right.
know.
It's actually in the continuum of sort of weird magic people that come down and to help us, save us, that we were talking about. Yeah. I mean, no, they should have put it in. Whatever. It's better.
Figure it out.
He is a
Gwen, to
starman
continue on
way up in the sky, and he would like to meet us, but he is concerned that it would blow our minds.
It's very true.
But
Gwen, to continue on what you're saying, it definitely, like, I love that it was still in an era where there was still this idea of you had to connect the audience's sense of wonder to something that was really happening.
Yeah.
And especially in a sci-fi movie, I think that's really, really cool for when it came out. And I can't think of any other, like, any recent examples of anything like that. Because I think at this point with movies, we've just taken, we've seen everything, so we take it all for granted, and we're just like, yeah, aliens, got it, move on. And I feel like with this, the fact that they added in real life, like, it even, again, like, same as you, I was not a conscious person when Voyager 1 and 2 were going off, but I still feel this connection to it in a weird way, and it makes it make more sense to me for some reason.
I mean, I think that placing it within, you know, like the day-to-day milieu of 80s life in America, I mean, is something that obviously Spielberg nails hard in his big alien movies, you know. E.T. Getting to see the Star Wars toys, or what, you know, like, that there is this suburban relatability to it, that it then contrasts with, like, otherworldly, like, oh shit, this exists within my reality. If you're seeing these things, you know, I live in track housing in the suburbs too.
A movie recently that feels, I mean, I guess to some extent that's what Stranger Things is doing.
Well, but it's it's explicitly aping this, you know,
right?
That Amblin 80s tone. It's like that's the thing. I mean, I kind of want to see how much Starman is actually in that show now that I'm familiar with it. I bet that there are specific references, that being that show. I don't know. I think the Transformers movies, a few of them are kind of trying to do this.
I guess.
You know, it's a very different deal, of course, but like
there's another Bumblebee. There's another example of that trope.
Yeah.
Except the guy in that happens to be a robot, but still same thing.
That is trying to be one of these movies. It really is. Like, one of the few things right now that is doing that without being like explicitly awesome 80s, you know, this is Ready Player One style, remember this kind of Stranger Things version of it, which I guess qualifies as a defense of Bumblebee and the Transformers films.
I do think, listen,
that's not necessary.
Say what you will of the Transformers movies, Bumblebee is probably far and away the best one. I just got to say it. So, like,
I would agree with that.
There's reasons for it.
Yeah,
there's reasons for it, and one of the reasons is it does, like, it's a little bit more simple and old school in the fact that it's more about character building than destroying the world.
Now, to be fair, this is neither of us, me or you, Adam, have seen The Rise of the Beasts yet, so that could all change.
Touché.
You know, it's possible. There's
we'll have to come
robots.
back and apologize on a future podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were wrong. We I don't know. You think there's any chance there's a sort of an understated love story in The Rise of the Beasts coming up?
I hope not.
Maybe that gorilla robot. You know? Okay.
Oh.
You mean Optimus Primal? Is that who you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, I watched Beast Wars. I know where all this comes from.
It's not
good
a
show.
bad idea.
It's a terrible idea.
Yeah, it is.
The only robot love story I ever remotely enjoyed was whatever was going on between Ali Sheedy and Johnny Five.
I was about to say, are you going to bring up Short Circuit?
I mean, that kind of counts too, right? I mean, a little bit.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, like, in a very, very, like, small setting, this giant story is being told.
Right. And you have the government officials playing who are the bad guys. Like,
shit, it's actually a lot like Short Circuit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, once you start understanding tropes, especially like in specific genres like sci-fi, you start to go, oh, these are all
they're
like,
everywhere.
they're all the same movie, but I like all of them for different reasons.
It's
but like
crazy how many of these we got in the 80s and then like never again. That's
well, and I think a lot of it does have to do with E.T. being such
Yeah.
a smash hit, and then all for the rest of the 80s, it's like everyone's trying to make
Mac and Me.
that movie.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. That's exactly what it is. You're right. Yeah. It's the same tailspin that has got us 75 superhero movies in the last 4 years.
Exactly.
Oh boy.
Exactly.
Well, so yeah, people are probably like sick of these, but in the 80s at this point. Well, no, this was still in the early wave, I guess.
Yeah, and this can take credit for like starting it off, really, because this was there even before E.T. Or alongside E.T.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, like, I don't the acting and writing is so much better than Short Circuit or
well. Let's not say anything we can't take back. It's been a minute since I've seen Short Circuit. Maybe it's great. I don't know. It's probably not great. Isn't that a Gutenberg special? That's yeah.
There is
Fisher
some Gutenberg
Stevens.
in there.
I remember him now.
Yeah, Fisher Stevens playing
Stevens playing an Indian person.
We don't have that.
A little rough.
This is actually a very sensitive film. This is like a very humanist kind of a really lovely movie that is deeply optimistic and has nice things to say about I don't know, humanity and consciousness and just our potential and what could happen. That's
why I immediately wanted to see who wrote it. And when I saw that the two of the guys who made most of the screenplay ended up going to write Stand By Me, I don't know how much nowadays with writers of action, sci-fi, big movies also have those types of movies on their resume. Like, I just don't know if that happens as much anymore.
Well, those movies don't happen as much, you know?
Sure.
I mean, I guess, you know, if you were to make Stand By Me now, the reason it would get made was because, well, because it's a remake of Stand By Me. It's existing IP. But a movie like Stand By Me would need something like that. It would need some kind of, existing hook that it could be sold on. You know, even, I think when Stand By Me comes out, they don't even make a big deal of it being written by Stephen King because, they're not really trying to make a horror film, which is what he's known for at the time. Right. So it's just a film that exists for its own sake. And that is something that we're pretty lost on, sadly, unless you're
it's clearly it's a coming of age movie, and you do feel like Starman isn't there is something coming of age to it because it's about like this very quick loss of innocence and then having to kind of like rediscover humanity, yada yada yada, all that stuff. But like we do not get that type of storyline going through Big Side. Like, you're not going to see that in any new Dune movie or anything like that. It's just not the same type of animal that it used to be. And that's not to say that we don't get really good stories in newer sci-fi movies. It's just a totally different thing now. It's not nearly as intimate, not nearly as like scaled down and simple. It's all got to be huge, which is obviously like where sci-fi is a genre that like inevitably we're going to get to the bigger and bigger spectacle. But we lose stuff like the cool things that are in this movie that are small and interesting and just about these two characters that like have a familiarity even though they are not supposed to. It's a unique take on this type of story.
Yeah, and I think that is actually very important. I think that the fact that this has so much similarity with with all these 80s kind of properties, but what it does not have is a coming of age aspect. This is an adult story for adults. Yeah. And I think it's fine for family. It's a fine family movie and kids can appreciate it and be like, "Ooh, look at that scary puppet." That's cool, but this is a story for adults to appreciate, and that is unusual in genre. I mean, not when John Carpenter films, but it's a different kind of adult. It's not the thing. This is a romantic story for adults, and not meant to titillate in the ways that those films are. I mean, it's sexy, but it's not really that sexy. It's more romantic.
I mean, right? And honestly, the moment where like the lovemaking happens, as an audience member, I definitely had a sense of like, this is crazy. But also, if I had a chance to be with
Yeah.
my dead husband again on some level, even though it's not him, like, I don't know, like who could say no to that? And something in his acting and her acting, both of them, it's just so unbelievably good that you accept it.
Yeah, and
And
despite all my talk of how sexy Jeff Bridges is in this, well, that's not what draws her to him. You know, it is
no,
his decency, I guess, or not even decency,
yeah.
his goodness,
his humanity.
I guess.
Well, but also, like, you see, I've read all these things about how he was imitating the movements of a bird, to try to get something completely non-mammalian. And but as he goes through the movie, he becomes more and more human-like in his characteristics and behavior.
It must have been
And
just incredible to chart this performance, just like
right, yeah. And
yeah.
I also I get how she could fall in love with that as he's slowly becoming more and more of an individual who also still looks like her dead husband. And I gotta say, he is a pro-choice king.
Oh, big time.
Because he says, there's a baby in you now, do with it what you will.
God,
and I
and
just
tell me,
love that.
Right,
I love that scene.
Well, and it also,
so
what's amazing to me is it has the like cliche moment of her saying, "Take me with you." And I feel like this movie actually does a better job earning that moment than a lot of other movies that have a similar idea. Because by that point, you're like, yeah, why wouldn't she want to go with him? Or, I mean, like, even if you're not on board with the way she's feeling, it makes sense for her to be like, screw it. Is there any way I could survive where you came from? Because I'd rather have this than dealing with whatever the hell else is going on.
Yeah.
Man, she's good in this movie. Oh my God.
They both are. And the final shot it's such a beautiful way to end the movie that, not focusing on the spaceship, which is like the obvious choice, but to focus on her just and all of the light. Just beautiful.
The light
when he goes up in the ship.
God, yeah.
When he goes up in the ship, what happens? Does the body go up too? Or is then she just left with his body, the body still remaining there?
No, the body does not remain. He goes up bodily into
that would be traumatizing if then she had to deal with that. Okay, good.
Oh, no, it's... Man, we've been talking about this.
Cast it aside.
We've been talking about this on the podcast recently, that Carpenter does endings better than just about anyone. Like, there's almost no one who knows how to get the fuck out of a movie better than John Carpenter. He's just aces it every time. And this is another fine example of that. It ends no fat on the ending. It's just, boom. He went back and this all happened. And I don't know what happens after this, but everyone's better for it having happened. And that's it. I mean, you could probably game out an ending where both Karen Allen and Charles Martin Smith end up in black sites for the rest of time. But I don't believe that happens. Well, I don't think that happens because of how this movie goes.
They also totally if this movie was made in a different era, maybe a little later, and then it's kind of asking for someone to write a sequel.
I was going to say the exact same thing. This movie would not have a sequel if it came out today.
Right.
That would just never happen.
I think
Star Baby would be the next movie. And it'd be terrible.
I'm surprised they haven't.
You can make it probably like another road movie.
That's got to be somewhere on the list of like what are other properties we can milk a little bit more of. Let's get Timothée Chalamet to play Starman Baby and see what happens. Like
I can just imagine like a 4-year-old in a car saying like yellow means drive very, very fast.
Right. What makes me think, like, honestly, what it made me think of is if they made a sequel, it would have been it reminded me of like AI, like that type of performance. I was like, oh, they would definitely get like a Haley Joel Osment type of kid to be a little bit too precocious and a little bit too awkward. And I don't know if I would like it, but I feel like that's what it would be.
Well, technically, if you made the movie now, Star Baby would be our age, Adam, just about.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe
Well, that's
Haley
why I
Joel
was
Osment
saying,
can
like,
play it now.
Yeah, maybe.
That'd be a twist.
I mean, knowing what he's signed up for, and I don't mean this with any shame because I like the guy. Like, he'd do it.
Of course he'd
He
do it.
would. He's down to do anything at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you write that film.
And also Karen Allen would too. Let's be fair. She did the fourth
Karen
Indiana
Allen.
Jones movie where they didn't even give her anything to do. So
She's not going to say no to an Indiana Jones. She's not going to say no to Starman either, I guess.
yeah, she's not going to say no to much.
She should have been in
Which is
so
fine.
much. She should have been in all the movies. You know,
She's still working.
yeah, is she? I mean, beyond just
I
showing up in
I
Indiana
checked her
Jones?
IMDb. No, she actually had. I mean, I don't actually know what these credits are. I've never heard of them for the most part. So
What are the big?
I don't know.
What are the big Karen Allen movies that I'm missing? She must have got a star vehicle in the '80s beyond just this movie. Like, you know,
I'm afraid that might not be so.
oh man, that's ridiculous.
She was
Well,
a mom in The Sandlot.
Oh, sure,
That's
sure.
right.
Mm-hmm. This is like a John Cazale style resume here. This is like look at the movies she's in. I mean, okay, leave off the Crystal Skull.
Well-
You got Animal House, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Starman, Scrooged, and you know those are classics. Each and every one.
Well, yeah, but
Her
unlike
Glass Menagerie, it was a good star turn.
Oh,
unlike
that's fun.
unlike John Cazale, she also has 1,000 movies you've never heard of.
Right?
But
Yeah,
yes.
that's the thing.
Several.
Well, unfortunately, the one thing I think of, and I'm bummed out that I think of this, but I'm sure we could easily research it, is just that, like, my assumption when this happens, especially with women who are in Hollywood, is that maybe she decided to stop her career to have a family, and then at that point, Hollywood is just kind of like, all right, well, we'll get back to you whenever. So, like, that's I know that she is a mom because I remember her talking about that when they were making Indiana Jones 4, she was making the point in an interview that, like, when they first made the Raiders, like, her and Lucas and Spielberg were all, like, younger and didn't have kids, and now they all have kids, which is part of the reason why I think Indiana Jones 4 was what it was, is because they were trying to make a kids movie for their own grandkids. But it's possible that that's all that happened, is that she basically was like, okay, I'm going to take a year or two off, and unfortunately either she didn't realize or she didn't care that it's like, especially then, Hollywood will very quickly be like, all right, then we don't need you.
Yeah, and frankly, like, you walk away in your quote unquote prime, and you come back and you no longer look like a sex object, then Hollywood's not that interested.
Exactly.
I will say she was in The Bedroom, which was an excellent film.
I don't remember hearing that.
And The Perfect Storm, and apparently Malcolm X, which I don't remember her in that.
Wow,
Really?
mystery
I
performances.
don't remember her in that either.
I
I
kind
know.
of do remember her in Perfect Storm. Isn't she like she's on the radio or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or something.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not unlike Adrienne Barbeau in The Fog, another John Carpenter film. Connections. That's not a connection. Okay.
By the way, did you notice that one of the cops in this movie is MC Gainey, who's
Yes,
like
I
a
did.
character actor? That, like, I also love those two cop characters. The again, it's the thing of, like, we need to move on with the plot. So one of them is like, oh, these federal agents are going to be getting all the news stories, so we better do something. So, like, it's just so ridiculous, but sure, why not? You're jealous of the feds.
Love
Right.
you, Adam. I would. I had noticed MC Gainey and was going to keep it to myself. I was just going to be like, no one cares about MC Gainey. Thank you. I care.
I do.
It's
I care.
Great character actor.
MC Gainey cares.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
I wonder if he cares. Also in Con Air, a film coming up surprisingly often here. Oh, I could imagine Cage doing Starman. Isn't that his kind of thing? Wouldn't he love to have played this role?
Yeah, but it wouldn't. I would not be rooting for their relationship in the same way.
But City of Angels, he's already doing
You're
something
right. He
like
did it.
that.
He did. That's exactly right.
And he
Yeah.
didn't. That was not like I
like
am a
that movie.
Cage fan.
I like that
I
movie.
think he's a great actor. That movie, he was not doing great work.
I'm a fan of City of Angels. Although, you know, it's been a while. I'd have to see that again to really speak knowledgeably about it. But I don't know.
Yeah.
The soundtrack. Uh,
The
yeah.
soundtrack was beautiful.
It's got 2 real bangers on it. Yeah.
It's got Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls.
So how could you not love it? There's one moment in this movie that I don't know if I want to talk about, but it's fascinating to me.
What is it? No, tell me.
There's the moment on but the scene before the love scene. There's a moment when he has this realization that that like everything about his body like has those sense memories, and to me it's like clearly what he's saying is he felt a little movement downstairs.
Yeah.
Okay, because like that's what I read from it. I was like, wait, am I supposed to just think that like he felt it in his heart?
Maybe.
No.
I don't know.
Right?
Like,
yeah, it's definitely.
I think, and again, this is one of the ways in which Jeff Goldblum does a job that I don't think many actors. Jeff Bridges.
Goldblum could have done it, actually.
He could have.
Goldblum
definitely
is one of the few people who could have done it as well.
And they would have said, Jeff, just do your normal acting, and people will be convinced you're an alien.
Right. But yeah, there's just not that many men who can do this, like, completely innocent but powerful kind of character and have him actually be not creepy but just beautiful when he's like, oh, guess what our bodies can do?
Right.
I just figured this out.
Well, he's so non-threatening, which is
Right.
very difficult to portray for especially a guy who's used to being like a leading man who's supposed to have like bravado on a certain sense. And in this movie, he drops all of that, which is really impressive considering if you look at a lot of the other movies he's done.
I mean, there's a hint of Simple Jack to this, to be fair. I mean, he's playing that as sort of the innocent, naive kind of the character who doesn't have experience or understanding.
He feels more evolved. Like,
right.
What he doesn't have an understanding of is these like silly, dumb human things.
Yeah.
You know?
Deer hunting.
Yeah. But also apple pie.
Also apple pie. Well, and they show so many times, they really like to show you how many times he picks up on something and learns specifically linguistically, but like in general, they like to show it isn't just once in the movie that you could see him picking up on what something is called and what, when he references when the night cook talks about all the different nicknames for money, and he later brings that up before they go gambling. Like they like playing with that a lot, that he'll learn something and then figure out a reason to use it in the next scene or a few scenes later.
Yeah. It's a good script, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is like, it eschews kind of like big moments. I mean, I guess there's a few, there's quite a few, like there's a few big explosions that are surprising, but for the most part, this is a sedate road movie, and it really is. I mean, Carpenter talks about like, what attracted him to this was not the genre, it's not the ET, it was the idea he wanted to do a relationship on the run. He wanted to do romantic banter. With the inspirations he cited are the 39 Steps and It Happened One Night, which I'm just like, okay,
wow,
cool, yeah. I mean,
that's really interesting to know.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Right? You would think it'd be the other shit. No, he wanted to do something very different. I mean, again, he's a big Hitchcock guy, of course, so that makes sense. But It Happened One Night, I'm just like, really? That's the DNA of this? That's interesting.
Well, and what's really interesting about that is, like I said earlier, like it still does feel like it still feels like it's a reaction to ET, but what's very interesting is that could very much be this, like production companies and studios really pushing for what's successful. And then when you put creative people in certain roles, that's sometimes what makes a movie more than just a cliche story, is that Carpenter wanted to make something more interesting than that. And so we did get something more, like, I don't know how, like, if you were to ask me how good this movie is, that's a hard question for me to answer. It's a really enjoyable movie. I
It's
don't
pretty
know how
good.
good it is.
It's pretty
It
good,
is
at
pretty
least,
good.
you know?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But like, it's weird that like that's not the first thing I think of. I just think like, man, this was a cool, solid movie, period.
Mhm.
Like, I don't even know what my opinion of it is necessarily. It was just like, that was a good, weird time.
Yeah, I don't consider this to be like an excellent film. Like one of his all-time greats. It's not top 5 Carpenter for me. But it is, you know, I don't know. I mean, I did just come to it. You know, this was a discovery this time. And it feels a bit like a grower, too. You know, this is one I feel like the more time you spend with it, the more it reveals itself to you, maybe. And I would happily rewatch this. I considered rewatching this just before we talked about this, but there's no time. But I will see it again, and it's certainly good. You know, like I said. But yeah. I don't know. It's almost a little too understated to make the strongest impression in some ways, which is a good
its
thing.
Flaws are, I think, too substantial. You know, like in the way that it is good, it is so good, and in the ways that it is not, it's.
The non-Karen Allen, Jeff Bridges scenes are essentially kind of just like placeholder. Right. Yeah, even though Charles Martin Smith is good, he's kind of the only other character here.
Right.
You know, and yeah,
well, there's his boss,
sure,
who's really playing like the villain of the movie, who has some pretty
Such
fun one-liners that are very over the top and cheesy, but he serves a purpose.
Yeah. I and it is in the shadow of these Spielberg films. It really is. I mean, those are such like openly emotional experiences to watch E.T. or Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You know, they are really, really dealing with you know, the basic concept of, you know, is there life outside this that's non-human? How would we interact with it? What does that mean? You know, all these things. They're sort of like the ultimate Alien films, and he made them like right 1-2 before this came out. It's a high bar to clear, and this is so much in continuity with those. Now, obviously, there's a lot of examples of people ripping it off and failing. You know, the Mac and Me being the most famous, but there's a bunch of versions, even up into like I don't know. Are you guys familiar with Monster Trucks? The recent film, which is
familiar, yes, but not
about a
I don't
kid
have
who
a great
befriends
knowledge
an
of it.
alien, and then the alien becomes part of his car and drinks gasoline, and then, you know, like the hood will open up and a little alien face pops up and it's like, ooh, and now the car can jump. Okay, you should watch the trailer for Monster Trucks. It's great. But we're still doing ET shit, basically. And this is so, while it is very much an ET movie, you know, in that continuity, it is got none of the stuff that you associate with a lot of it. You know, the kid part in particular, the fact that this is an adult film is really makes it stand out. And it's just too well made to you know, to not be worthy. It's good.
It's really good.
But I agree. It's not. I don't know that this is a film that's gonna really mean a lot to me. Maybe if I'd found it younger, it would have. But even then, I think it's an adult film. I don't know. I kind of just wish there were more movies like this now. You know, we've spent a lot of the time pointing out how many were like this back then, but they don't happen anymore unless you want Bumblebees or Beast Rises. Yeah.
Right. It's still got to be a spectacle on a certain level.
Optimus Prime.
Whereas this never, ever feels like it's going to get to that level. It definitely also, I was going to say about the soundtrack is... like, there are so many points in this movie where I thought to myself, man, if the score was slightly different, this would feel like a totally different movie. Like, I feel like Carpenter specifically put in much more synthy, creepy type of music to give it.
Well, that's Carpenter.
Yeah, that's Carpenter, and it gives it like an ambiguous feel. And I feel like if you would get a different score on here that was much more like romantic, it would be a completely different feel to them. Right. If this was John Williams, it would feel like it's way more of a romance movie with a sci-fi twist.
Yeah.
Whereas this really feels like a nice marriage of those two things. Like they're as much as you feel like he's never going to hurt her, they're always still maybe just because of the federal agents after them, whatever. Like there always is this sense of like, oh, but what is going to happen?
Yeah,
like,
it doesn't mean she's not going to get hurt. Like that's the thing. Right. He's not going to hurt her, but she's almost certainly going to get hurt somehow in this.
Right. How could she not?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, he did not compose this music.
Right. It's like a guy named Jack Nietzsche or something like that.
Yeah.
I do kind of miss him. I think this is a good score. I think it is, and it's very much a Carpenter-esque score. But, I always want a Carpenter score rather than not. And, this one's solid, but, it's not.
It's good.
Not one of his most memorable scores because, he's one of the best to play the game, especially when it comes to creepy synth. And,
right.
And it's good though. But yeah, if you're not going to give me actual Carpenter or Starman by David Bowie, still a good soundscape.
We'll take you, Nietzsche.
Yeah. I don't know. Is there? I think we're coming up on the end of this here. The sci-fi aspects of this, I do love moments in sci-fi when aliens kind of come to respect humans' capacity for love or goodness through our art or through our example, like when he's watching from here.
Well, do you remember what the tagline for this movie was?
No, what is it?
Oh, here, let me read it. This is on the poster. He has traveled from a galaxy far beyond our own. He is 100,000 years ahead of us. He has powers we cannot comprehend, and he is about to face the one force in the universe he has yet to conquer: love.
Ooh. Yeah.
There you go.
I don't really think of him as a conqueror.
I know. Well, I don't know. I mean, obviously the writers of the movie didn't write that copy, so.
I love long 80s taglines, by the way. Those have gone out of fashion. They kind of explain the entire premise. Maybe not in the most succinct way. That's great.
But there's something so hopeful, about being seen from this outside perspective that is so much more evolved than we seem to be, and having them actually see something worth appreciating that they hadn't thought of before.
I mean, it's
and that like all the goodness is tied to all the ugliness, that they are kind of inherently bound to each other.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this. When this pops up in sci-fi, it's kind of unusual to get it done with as much nuance as this, though. Like, I feel like it's usually going to be like, I don't know, the way Star Trek does it for the most part is just like, man, you humans sure are a special species. There's something really important about you guys. Or, it's the opposite. It's Avatar, which is like, oh, you're warmongers. Fuck off. You're the bad guys. This one is kind of more, I don't know, The Abyss does it. Where it's just sort of a, there you take the good, you take the bad. The facts of life.
Well, I would say also mentioning Star Trek, I do think not necessarily alien races, but I do think Data, the character Data, is another clear example of this type of trope of someone who is curious about humanity and wants to be more human on a certain level, but just can't necessarily.
I wonder if this was at all an inspiration for Spiner. I kind of see some of this in his performance, actually.
Totally.
A little bird-like.
Yeah, he's a little bird-like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh. I mean, yeah, he is one of those characters,
Spiner, who's also in, as far as I'm concerned, the benchmark. Yeah, Independence Day. That's the movie that alien movies changed after that. So
yeah,
he pops up everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that, I mean, my parents were not religious by any means, but they both, I remember, talked about both E.T. and Starman as sort of like Christ allegories.
Yes.
Of, trying to take, it's particularly because in Starman, he takes on the human form as Jesus did.
Yeah.
In order to understand what this experience is, and then getting crucified in return after just trying to.
I mean, Starman kind of slips the noose on that one, but yes,
he does.
But yeah, it's kind of unavoidable, Like he's just an incredibly decent, incredibly pure, good-hearted soul that is more than us, but comes to experience what we are, and sort of improves things.
It's a powerful tale.
Through magic around him. Yeah, it is. It's a Christ metaphor in just sort of general terms. I wonder if Carpenter thinks of it in that way. I mean, there's certainly enough beatific light that he's not a big theme guy for the most part. They Live notwithstanding, but this is It's pretty unavoidable in this story.
And Spielberg especially really hates it when people say that about E.T. because he's a Jew. And
Well,
he's
yeah,
like,
I was
no,
gonna
I was
say-
not
I
trying
was-
to do that. No.
I was going to say, as a Jew myself, I pick up on that stuff maybe a little less often, so I didn't necessarily see that with Starman, but it makes sense.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
makes sense that someone had that idea for sure.
Well, Carpenter has a real interesting relationship with religion. I think as you see over his films, movies like Vampires and Prince of Darkness. Prince of Darkness is about the anti-god living in a basement in South Central LA, and Christ was probably an alien trying to warn us about. That's a weird movie, man. That one's coming up for us. That'll be fun. He's mostly not exactly pro religion, I would say. I think it's just sort of part of this story, you know. The archetype of a sort of a mythic savior is just it's just baked into it. And as you say, you know, it's pretty explicit when he's taking human form and experiencing what it means to be human.
And raising deer from the dead,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. If you remade Starman now, who do you get? Who can do this?
There's one actor that I just always want to be in things, and I actually feel like he could do it, which is I would love to see Keanu Reeves do this. He kind of already did the Day the Earth Stood Still remake. That was kind of him being an alien. I feel like he kind of is an alien no matter what, who has great humanity with him. So I would be curious to see what that looked like. And then put him with, you know, we know he has chemistry with Sandra Bullock or
Winona. Yeah.
Oh, I would love to see Sandy Bullock play this part.
It's a good one.
Yeah, she'd be great.
They're both a little old, but yeah, I mean they're pretty good for it. Yeah, like them in
she's perfect.
Mid-aughts is like a pretty perfect recast. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to think of somebody who's like in their 30s now. Because that's where it really needs to be.
These are both demanding roles too. These are not, you know, you can't just slot a Jeff Bridges type in here. Not that those come easily either.
Specifically, what Jeff Bridges does so well is he can make his face go like completely blank. And like he just feels like a complete blank slate and then builds onto it throughout the movie. And so like, I don't know.
Well, another actor that, again, is someone else who's the wrong age, but I feel like if you made this movie 20 years ago, I think he would jump at this role, would actually be Jim Carrey.
Oh, yeah, he would love to
do a role like this.
He would love to,
like in his Truman Show era.
Yeah.
For the Karen Allen role, I could think. I mean, it's a much
you just need a very good actress who you will fall in love
with.
with.
Like Florence Pugh could totally do it. Like there's plenty of, I feel like, young actresses who could nail it. I
feel like Alexander Skarsgård could do it.
Ooh, he's good. That's interesting.
There's I mean, a few of the Skarsgårds could probably do it.
Oh yeah, the creepy one. The creepy one might be good. Yeah.
Bill.
Is that Bill? Bill's the creepy
Bill.
one. Yeah. Bill could totally do it.
Could Stellan do it?
No.
I mean, there was a point in time.
Maybe back in the day. Yeah, he probably could have. I mean, around the time this movie was made. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And who directs it though? Maybe Del Toro. Del Toro's the guy. I mean, that's pretty.
Greta Gerwig.
You know, why not? Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm just excited at everything she's making these days. But
totally. That's not a knock on Greta. I just don't know what her version of this movie would be.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm excited about it.
Yeah. And if it's her doing it, I would just cast Saoirse Ronan and Timothy Chalamet and call it a day. There you go.
No.
Okay, maybe I don't mean that.
I love both those actors. I really do, but I don't want Chalamet in this role.
Chalamet is just, at this point,
that would be annoying.
Anytime anyone is saying you're casting a young man in a role, he's just the first person I go to because I feel like I don't know young actors
Speaking of
anymore.
younger, slightly more annoying people, Adam Driver, I think, could really do this
You're
role.
right. That's a good one, yeah. He's also an adult, I think, which is key. I think they got to be 30s or so. Yeah.
I just don't know. He's someone who, it might just be because I know he's a taller guy. He's pretty intimidating, even when he's just standing there.
I'd say the same thing about Jeff Bridges.
Okay, fair.
He's big.
I think there's room for Starman to be scary a little bit, you know?
Yeah. Which I kind of wanted. I just don't know if that's the movie they would want to make. I kind of wanted there to be delve a little deeper into what's real, like, what are his intentions? Which I think could lead into creepier, very Carpenter type of scenarios.
It is interesting that there's no turn. It really is. I mean, it would be so easy to see the Carpenter version of this that has the sort of the twist, the dark twist, or the downside, or even just that there's a scary side to the aliens, and not at all. Not at all. They're just
well, the amount of times, and the first time they let you think that might happen is after he brings the deer back to life, and the hunter comes out and wants to fight it. Like there's that moment where you go, oh, he's just going to kill all of these guys. Like for me, there was that moment of like, oh, this is when a little bit of the turn is going to happen, and then later on, you could also think like
balls are so powerful.
His little magic balls are very powerful, and that's actually that I really like that it isn't just that he has powers, that he has these specific objects, and he only has so many of them. I do think is cooler than it just being that he just happens to be really powerful because he's an alien.
Yeah, I like that very much too. And it's a counter. It's like, oh, he's almost out of balls. Oh, no.
Yep.
Oh, he's going to need almost that ball later. Oh, yeah.
Well, then doesn't he leave one with her?
For the kid, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Which I guess, is the line that like, he'll know what to do with this? Is that what he says?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
What could that possibly mean?
Ambiguous. I mean, maybe
we're going to have to wait for Star Baby, the sequel.
Star Baby.
Well, yeah, with Haley Joel Osment as the star baby.
We might be waiting for a while, but I'm looking with Haley Joel Osment as the star baby and Sandra Bullock as his mother.
I mean, you just get Karen Allen.
I mean, can we do this? Like, I know that a lot of people do this now, but I know it's a thing that we do, and I couldn't help but think of it while watching this movie. What would Muppet Starman be like? Can we talk about that?
I mean, it does not have a strong ensemble to build out, unfortunately.
No, but can I tell you what I thought of? Because usually the way that one deals with a Muppet version of a movie is you have one human character and then a series of Muppets.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but think, like, what if Starman is just Gonzo? Like, what if they just go with there is just one Muppet? And then I inevitably couldn't. Then I just thought, wait, so does that mean that her ex-husband just looked like Gonzo? that's the joke.
That's the thing. Yeah. I mean, Gonzo's got to be Starman. He is from space, as we know, like canonically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, but who's Gonzo having a romance with? The one female Muppet, Piggy? I don't think so.
What's the chicken's name? Isn't he in love with the chicken?
Oh my God,
Camilla.
You're right.
Camilla.
Yeah.
It's...
And honestly, I think Camilla has the pathos for the role.
Does she speak English? She just balks, right?
Yeah,
she doesn't speak English.
But she does very empathetically.
I would be down for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You really get a sense of who she is as a person or a chicken.
Can't you see her smoking, drinking, watching the homemade films?
And then what's the cop Muppet? Like, what's the
cop Muppet? There's no.
You mean Sam the Eagle?
Yeah, Sam the Eagle. Like Sam the Eagle could totally be.
No, he's the general.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's the general. And I think you're one.
He's
human
the general, right?
The Charles Martin Smith character is your one human.
Is he your one human? I really just want to make that Fozzie, just because it'd be funny.
I think it's a Kermit role, but I think you need the one human. And
I'm just always rooting for Fozzie. So
I've been watching this a lot because my daughter likes the Muppets, and Fozzie is such a loser, and and I know, yes, and not just like, oh, he's not a very funny stand-up. No, he is desperate and grasping and pathetic, and will betray you if you think it gets him just one hint of fame or acclaim. He sucks.
The way I've always thought about Fozzie is.
Will he betray you?
Oh yeah.
When does he do that?
He will.
Oh yeah, that took me by surprise.
He'll backstab. He will do it if it'll get him on stage. He will lie.
Do you have examples of this?
Yeah,
he does it on the show sometimes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
I've always thought of Fozzie as in like a Marx Brothers movie when Groucho is pretending to be whatever Rube is like involved in the story itself. I just feel like Fozzie is that character. Like he isn't smart enough to be Groucho, so he's just kind of the dumb vaudevillian type person who happens to be in those movies also, which I love. I think Fozzie might be my favorite Muppet, honestly, which says something.
I mean, Waka Waka Waka, justice for Fozzie. You be quiet.
He sucks. He's no.
Although it's always
good. He's a good
disconcerting
character.
when you see his whole body. You know, when you see his
He's
whole body,
large.
you're always
He's very
like,
large. Yeah.
he's very big, and, and he
a
moves
big
his
guy,
hips.
yeah.
He moves his hips a lot.
Yeah.
And he drives his Studebaker.
Now I'm imagining him as Starman, and I'm kind of liking it even more.
He has the innocence.
He does.
They all have innocence. They're Muppets.
Gonzo has seen some shit, is all I'm gonna say.
Gonzo is like I don't know. There's different eras of Gonzo.
True.
He is more anarchic and chaotic in the original conception. They all changed, really. I mean, Kermit's kind of steady Eddie. But okay, we're done here. This episode is over. Thank you for listening to us talk about Starman. Next up is Big Trouble in Little China, another Spielberg-esque Carpenter film. One of the greats, I think. One of the all-timers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that'll be great. Thank you very much, Gwen. Thank you very much, Adam. We'll have you back for something, I don't know, maybe Carpenter, maybe one of the bad ones. We'll see. All right. Thank you both. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.